I bought this toy. It's kind of a really bad toy. Like, he can't transform without breaking. And he's like that big. And he's like $23. But it's cool. So I watched Transformers 1. By now, all of you should know my thoughts on the Transformers franchise. I love the Michael Bay films and everything that came out of that era, and while the franchise has had good stuff released since then, I don't really have much of a connection to the franchise as of late, and I've kind of fallen out of love with it due to certain recent releases that I feel failed to capture what made Transformers so cool when all of us were kids. And then they announced Transformers 1, an animated prequel that takes place entirely on Cybertron, telling the story of Optimus Prime and Megatron, or as they were known then, Orion Pax and D16, who were as close as brothers, and how their relationship would impact the fate of Cybertron. What this also meant is that there would be no human characters and no mention of Earth. It was in many ways the Transformers movie people had been asking for. Not the one I had been asking for, but the one people had been asking for. But then that first trailer dropped, and whatever interest I had in the film was completely sucked out. And then when the second trailer dropped, while much better, it still didn't do much to excite me beyond just establishing that the movie wasn't going to be all laughs all the time. I didn't love the character designs. I felt like the voices didn't match the characters they were coming out of, and the trailers did not do any job of conveying what tone and vibe the movie was going for. But of course, being a massive fan of this franchise, I still had to go see the movie. And to my complete surprise, this movie was kind of a banger. Now, there are a lot of people saying this is the best Transformers film, and I think those people need to dial it back. But before I get into the problems, I want to talk about what worked for me. The entire film hinges on the relationship between Orion Pax, played by Chris Hemsworth of all people, and D16, played by Brian Tyree Henry of all people, who we know will grow into Optimus Prime and Megatron. And for the sake of ease, I'm just gonna call them Optimus and Megatron throughout this video. But that's the one thing you have to get right. If you don't get that right, the film completely falls apart. I was shocked when I was watching the first act of this movie because both of these characters feel so different. Not in a bad way. It doesn't feel like they're written wrong. It just really feels like you're seeing them before the characters we know them as. Megatron is younger, but you still see some of his dark side beneath the surface. Optimus, on the other hand, feels like a teenager. He doesn't really like authority. He likes to rebel. He likes to have fun. A lot of the first act of this movie is Optimus is trying to find a way to have fun. And it wasn't a negative because from his very first second on screen, you can still see that built-in drive to help everyone that will help him grow into the Optimus we all know. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't caught off guard. But these two do feel like best friends and brothers. From their very first scene, you can tell that these two have a very special bond. And even as the rift starts to grow between them as the movie goes on, you still get the sense that everything they are doing is meant to be for each other. I think it was also a great choice to make the main group of characters that we follow in this movie a group of mining bots who can't transform. I was hesitant about that when I first saw the trailer because I thought they were doing it just because kids are going to lose their mind when the characters transform for the first time. And while that is true, they do very interesting things story-wise with this concept. It makes the characters underdogs. It makes you believe that they could never become heroes, and the characters themselves are brought up believing that. So you're supposed to watch this movie and never once for a second think that Orion Pax could become Optimus Prime. So that when he does become Optimus Prime, it feels earned and it feels like he was truly given a great honor. And I should probably mention the casting because for the first time in a Transformers film, Optimus Prime is not voiced by Peter Cullen. He is voiced by Thor Odinson himself, Chris Hemsworth.
We roll out.
What?
Louder.
Transform and roll out!
I think that as Orion Pax, Hemsworth's voice works, and I understand why they cast him for that. He has a deeper voice that can suit a robot really well. However, when he becomes Optimus Prime, I don't think it works. And you're probably thinking, John, they're the same guy. Technically, yes, but also no, and you'll understand when you watch the movie. It made me wonder if they should have swapped his voice and had Peter Cullen do the voice, or do some sort of voice modulation on Chris Hemsworth's in post, but they didn't. But I will say, I do respect that Chris Hemsworth is not doing a Peter Cullen impression. There's some lines where it feels like he is, but for the most part, he's doing his own Optimus Prime, and even though I don't think it sounds quite right, I will always prefer that to trying to do an impression. As for Brian Tyree Henry as Megatron, I love him as an actor. Phastos in Eternals, probably not the best example. Lemon in Bullet Train. Jefferson Davis, I love him. He's great. He didn't really work for me as Megatron, though.
I'm not talking to you.
You know what? We are so screwed.
Thought you weren't talking to me.
Because where I felt Chris Hemsworth was changing his voice slightly and doing something with his voice to try to fit Optimus, I felt like Brian Tyree Henry was just doing his voice. You could take any of his lines from this movie and put them on Miles' dad in Into the Spider-Verse, and vice versa, and they sound the same. They're just preaching very different things. And I feel like I never got Megatron from his voice. But where the casting and performance left a bit to be desired from me, the story makes up for it in spades. Megatron was hands down my favorite part of this movie. His tragedy and his betrayal felt real and understandable, and I would say that when he steps fully into being Megatron, it has just as much impact as when Orion Pax becomes Optimus Prime. And to the people like me who were worried that this movie would be too child-friendly, yes, it does have a lot of kiddie moments, like a lot of them.
The wheels! I need wheels!
Certain characters and plot beats are clearly designed for kids to be excited because they won't be nearly as invested in the drama as adults are. Hell, there is a racetrack on the poster. It's not really a main plot point in the movie, but kids will love it. But when this movie locks in, it locks in. There are several scenes where there are just no jokes, and it's a very dark and ominous feeling. This movie did what the MCU can't grasp doing, which is that you don't have to be quipping every second. But the reason I chose to mention this here is because there are moments where they let Megatron be Megatron. He does some things in this movie that I know they only get away with doing because it's robots and not human beings made of flesh and blood. Hell, I'd say Megatron does something in the third act that's just as brutal as the shit in the Bay movies. Honestly, the only robot in this film I didn't like was Bumblebee. Now, obviously, they're never gonna make a Transformers movie without Bumblebee, but his inclusion in the film annoys me. Now, Bumblebee is in this film largely to be the comic relief. And I'm usually okay with that, but it all falls apart when you realize that every single character, kind of MCU style, has the same sense of humor, and everyone is cracking quips and one-liners, and there's a bunch of physical comedy, and every once in a while they do the, like, hold for laughs thing before they continue on with what they're saying. So there's not really a purpose to a sole comic relief character, yet everything Bumblebee does is meant to be funny or cracking a joke.
Why did you cut the door?
What? No, it was already like that, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
It was. Yeah,
Yes.
it was already like. Yeah, that's right.
Like, the first
Badassatron.
joke, hilarious. I laughed my ass off. But the joke is made like 5 times, and it gets less funny every time. I honestly feel like nothing is lost if Bumblebee is taken out of the movie. The movie starts and ends the same. But Bumblebee's here because this movie is, say it with me, a kid's movie. And this is going to be the make or break for some people. If you're going in wanting a dark Transformers movie that tells the origin of Optimus and Megatron, manage your expectations, because while it does tell the origin story of Optimus and Megatron, and it is dark, it's first and foremost a kids movie. You're going to be having set pieces designed to make kids laugh and have a good time. You're not going to be watching things like Decepticons plowing through an entire city, murdering everyone, because this movie's not made for that. This movie is made for like 6-year-olds. So, if you don't want to watch that, this movie's not for you, and Michael Bay made a bunch that are. But if you're okay watching that, and you go in fully aware this movie is not made for your demographic, you will like it more. Is this the best Transformers movie? Again, no. I think these 3 films are all better than it still, but it is a pretty solid ride, and I guess the highest praise I could give this movie is that I am so down for the 2 sequels they have planned. And to close it all out, I'm going to leave you guys with this little nugget, that there is a moment in this movie that had me feeling similar to how I felt when I watched What's Up Danger for the first time. So there you guys go. I have nothing else to say. I just wanted to give a very brief, non-spoiler spiel on Transformers 1. It felt right. I also haven't uploaded in a little bit, and what better way to start uploading again than to talk about my bread and butter. Did you guys see Transformers 1? What did you think about it? Let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear if you liked it as much as me, more than me, or not as much as me, and why. Let's get a nice, lively discussion going. But on that note, I'm gonna go play some Star Wars Outlaws, because that game is really fun, and I haven't beaten it yet because I've been super busy, and I'm gonna go beat it. Bye.